But one thing about Donald Trump is he's consistent. You can predict the direction he's going, not what he's going to say, but you can predict the direction he's going. So I'm so glad you made it here. Before you watch this video, click the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you get access and notifications to 3 videos a week on the art and science of ethical influence. I'll appreciate it, and so will many. So let me start with my dear friend, the great Harvey MacKay, best-selling author of over 6 books. He's well known for Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And Harvey taught me the principle of second place. The principle of second place. Now, Harvey started as a 26-year-old in the Twin Cities area in Minnesota, right? So Minneapolis, St. Paul. And he was in the envelope printing business. And his mentor, his first day, on training day, he took him in a car. And about 5 a.m. in the morning, they're waiting outside of their number one competitor. They're waiting outside of, the manufacturing plant of their number one competitor. Can you see it? It's freezing cold. If you've ever been to Minneapolis, freezing. And, they have maybe 3 warm months. And all of a sudden, this truck comes out, early in the morning, before 6 a.m. And then Harvey's mentor says, let's go. So they go and they follow the truck. The truck stops. They look at where the truck stops. That's a customer. There's a delivery, and the truck goes again. And then stops again. There's a customer, a delivery, and the truck keeps going. Now, they do this all day, and they follow the truck all day until it comes back to the plant. And they take notes on who the truck is delivering to. Then the next day, they do the same thing, and the truck goes to different customers, delivering envelopes because they're in the envelope production business. You only use an envelope once, so it's a great business to be in. All right, so after he compiled about 100 customers that weren't his, he went to every single one of them, and he told them, I noticed that you're doing business with, and he mentioned the number one envelope company in the city, and he says, I'm not here to steal their business. I am here to be your number 2. Because I'm not going to fight for number 1, but I'm going to go all in for number 2. Because if something happens and there's a relationship that's broken, or maybe they change their business policies, or maybe they go under, but something's going to happen over the year, and just know that I'm here and I'm number 2. Kind of like Avis, we're number 2. We try harder. Of course, Hertz is who they're trying harder, as Hertz being number 1 back in the day, no longer. So that's being second, and that's a good thing. So that's what I do. What I do is I look for ways that I can be second place. Sometimes a thought leader is doing business with someone, and they're consulting with someone, getting interviewed by someone. I reach out to them and say, look, I want to be your number 2. I realize that you have your number 1 already, and I sprinkle some karmic seeds, is what I call them, all over until I become number 1 by default. They find me. Here's what I learned from Jack Canfield, my good friend. Now, Jack and I have known each other for about 15 years. I've interviewed him over 80 times. I did it 5 years straight with AskJackCanfield.com month after month. And he's the best-selling author, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he's a solo author of The Success Principles. He authored that. And he has the principle of the rule of 5. Okay. Now, the rule of 5 is all about doing 5 things every single day. 5 things, 5 actions. And it comes from Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen making a pledge to themselves to put Chicken Soup for the Soul in the hands of 5 people every single day, in the hands of 5 people. So they did that for 16 months until they had a bestseller. They found a publisher, and the rest is history. So on index cards, what I do is I write down 5 things I'll do every single day. And then after I've done them, I cross them out. And I have stacks and stacks of those those index cards. And I'm going to give them to my kids. I'll tell them you can use them as firewood, or, you can keep them. But there lies all of the actions I took to get where I am. I've had the honor and privilege to make over $1 million in less than 29 minutes in 2007. I've had the privilege of sharing the stage with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Sir Richard Branson, of course, Harvey MacKay, Larry King, Shaquille O'Neal, Mikhail Gorbachev, and many others who've gotten in trouble, and I'm not going to mention their names anymore, but they were highly esteemed at one time. So the rule of 5 is 5 actions, and when you do the action, you cross it out. Don't put down a huge action such as putting together a satellite network. It's a small action, and small enough so that you can get it done, like calling someone or emailing someone or creating an autoresponder series. Whatever it is that you do, just make sure you control it. It's your agenda. And what I do is I have prime time, and I use a countdown timer, and I also have an hourglass. And between the times 8:30 to 11:30, that's my time block. That's when I do my rule of 5 stuff. I cross it out, and I feel so good. I don't throw them away. This is old school. I don't like the electronic stuff. It's not heart-centered enough, where it just kind of disappears, like the to-do list on your phone. I don't like that. What I like is seeing the hard. I mean, you can touch it. It's very disruptive, right? And so I have a stack in the back, here in my office, and I have a stack in storage, and it's super cool. I don't use a journal, even though I have clients who have productivity journals. I like the rule of 5 because if I can put everything, actually it's a smaller card than this. If I can put everything on this and I can cross it out with a pencil so I can see it, I write it with a pen, and then I cross it out with a pencil, then it's like going to heaven without the inconvenience of dying. And that's an Alexism. My book, Alexisms, is online. You can Google it and check it out. It's free digitally, and it's, I think, $20 if you get it through Amazon. But there was one time when I said, write down 10 Alexisms. So that was a rule of 5. So I wrote down 10. Then the next day I said, write 10 more, then 10 more. Eventually I had over 550. I emailed my list. I said, will you pick the ones that are your favorites? And they picked 140. That goes into the book. They're short enough to be tweeted. And that ends up becoming the Alexisms book, which you have isms as well. I'm sure it's super, super simple. And we have people now who are starting to think of what their isms are. The reason I did it is people were borrowing mine. And so if they were on stage before me and I got on stage, I looked like the imposter. So I just wanted it in a book, to keep it on record. So the third principle is from a guy who's controversial, Donald Trump. Now, you don't call him Donald, you call him Mr. Trump. And I interviewed him in 2005. And he taught me the principle of calculated risk. But one thing about Donald Trump is he's consistent. You can predict the direction he's going, not what he's going to say, but you can predict the direction he's going. So what he taught me is to calculate the risk in advance. So what I did is I interviewed him for a book that he wrote with the CEO of the Learning Annex at the time. And they had these huge rallies, 20, 25,000, 30,000 people. And Donald Trump, Robert Kiyosaki, and others, Tony Robbins would be there. And they were what's called the whales. They attract the people, and they'd have a local celebrity, local news person, local athlete. And then you'd have other people like me selling, from the stage, just once the people were there. So it was fun while it lasted. Those are called rallies. And, when I talked to him and interviewed him on the phone, I made a mistake of saying Donald, and I was reprimanded, and I was told to call him Mr. Trump, which I did. And in the process of watching the way he cuts deals, he calculates the risk in advance. He doesn't just do it and look at all the positive outcomes. He looks at what could happen and go wrong, and he puts the risks first so that the absolute worst case scenarios are right there in front of him. That's super smart. That's why he gets buildings done faster and less expensive than really any other builder I know. He took himself out of being in $900 million in debt, is a story I heard at one time. And now, he's a billionaire. So you got to give him credit. He knows how to go from here to here, which is what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur takes something from a lower level of productivity to a higher level of activity. So calculate risk first and then get started. Because if the metrics don't work for your business, then why go through the process? Are you with me? All right. Next is Harv Eker. Good friend, the most successful joint venture that I've ever done. I think we've made over $25 million together over the past 10 years. And this is interesting. If he saw this right now, he'd be smiling. The principle of projection. Now, Harv has taught me a lot. and I speak on behalf of Harv all over the world, in Europe, in South Africa, in Australia, all over, recently in Brazil, in South America. And so the principle of projection, of all the things Harv teaches, is something that is really not anticipated by students of his. So I consider him a friend, I consider him a mentor, and he's also a partner. So what's projection? Well, the first time I met Harv was in Los Angeles, and it was at an event called the World's Greatest Marketing Seminar, which I led and emceed for 9 times after my first debut, which I taught it half the day. It was an honor. I couldn't believe it. And so it was in LA on Century Boulevard, right by LAX airport. And there were 900 people there. And I watched him teaching from stage. And so after he was done, he came back and I introduced myself and I said, Harv, I was really impressed, actually stunned at how much you care for your students, just in your training process. I mean, do they know what they have? Now, that wasn't a compliment. That was a surprise reaction, because not all trainers, not all teachers are that way. Because I was watching him do a process with somebody who was going the extra mile, kind of like the way Tony Robbins does interventions. You can tell when people genuinely care, and no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You've heard that. So what I did is I projected what's important to me on him. And later, 5 years later, after we made a few $1 million together, I asked him, Harv, why did you pick me? There's all these trainers out there. Why me? He said he trusted me, number one. And secondly, he said, the first time we met, you told me how much and how impressed you were in the way I trained and that how much I cared for my students. Well, my psychology, he said, is that's a projection. So I can count on you as a trainer for me and as a teacher, because if you spot it, you got it. And that's the power of projection. If someone annoys you, if you spot it, you got it. There's something inside you that recognizes something annoying until it's reconciled. If someone makes you super happy and excited, then you're projecting it on them. And everyone is looking at the same thing, but they're projecting their own assumptions, their own biases, and they look at different things. For example, this is a pencil to a human being, but to a dog, their projection is this is a chew toy. Now, who's right? Well, if you're a dog, the dog's right. If you're a human, the human's right. So that's the power of projection, is watch how you project on others. If someone annoys you, ask yourself, what really annoys me about that person? Chances are there are seeds inside you to work on, okay? Now, I'm not a therapist. I'm a trainer. And, training is about applied psychology, and modifying behavior. That's what marketing is as well. So I'm just suggesting, learn what projection is, go to Google and type it in. But the principle of projection is what made T. Harv Eker's relationship very important to me. And it sparked the flame that has been fanned with a stoker for over 10 years. Text the keyword you see on your screen to this mobile number, 415-980-3555. Now, if it's your first time visiting, please subscribe to this channel. And if you've done this before, stick around, because we have another high impact and high influence video coming right after this one. All good wishes.